Hello, I'm Toycat, and welcome back to another second channel video. Today I wanted to talk about public transport, and if there's one thing I know about public transport from all the memes on the internet, it's that the United States is not very good at it. And that is something backed up by our first map today, because the average percent of a population living in a city with convenient access to public transport does show that the US is not in blue like most of Western Europe or Canada, but is instead in the grey 40 to 60% category, meaning about half of Americans have easy access to public transport. That is defined as being 500 meters from a low-capacity public transport network, like a bus or a tram, or 1,000 meters to a high-capacity network, like a train or a ferry. And yeah, this is a really interesting map that I argue would skew against larger countries versus smaller ones. Even Japan, which is famous for their, super decent public transport networks, are kind of skewed against here, but you can see that it's very interesting regardless. And, if this doesn't back up the narrative enough, this map from The Economist certainly should, because it shows that it's not just public transport access, which is bad. Public transport use is pretty unideal on a per capita basis, because from 2008, although there's been some rebounds, most public transport networks are not growing on a public transport use per person basis. They're not even staying the same. They are literally going down. I mean, do I have to explain graphs to you? I'm sure I don't. Thank you for understanding them just great. But yeah, so basically as a result of that, things are going quite bad, and that was before we talk about the pandemic. And if you're a big public transport advocate, it's really hard to talk about those years, because public transport is trying to transport this public good for everyone, except what about when the public good for everyone is trying to stay away from people? How do you balance those two things? And a lot of public transport advocates were like, yeah, what if we shut down this system of public goods so we can do this other public good? And the end result is minus 84% ridership in Rome, minus 67% in Madrid, minus 25% in LA, which is surprisingly low on one hand, but kind of surprisingly high on the other when you really think about it. But public transport use all around the world has been going down, meaning that the US's figures, which were kind of concerning on a proportion of the public that could use them, kind of concerning on a proportion of the public that were using them in the cities where it's good, has gotten even more concerning. And so I wanted to make a point today that isn't, by the way, also just want to mention, do you like the new camera we're using just for this one video? I'll talk more about it later. But you know what's fun? I can like fly around the screen because we're adding it in post. So, ooh, wow, high quality editing, not. But yeah, something that is high quality is the fact that the United States actually has one of the best public transport maps in the world that isn't counted in this graph right here. And because, everyone knows private transport is getting in a car, driving somewhere in your one-person pod. But America is the best at public transport by a wide mile, if you include the one thing that maybe most people who are public transport advocates don't like to include. So this is total passenger kilometers from international aviation, and just as a fun little fact right here, there are only 3 countries in the highest category between 250 billion kilometers and 500 billion kilometers. By the way, this isn't per capita, this is total for the country, and you can see it's the United States, you can see it is China, both famously big aviation markets. And then what fascinates me is the only country I can see otherwise is the United Kingdom, and that is pretty bad on a per capita basis to have the same international kilometers traveled as the 2 of the biggest economies on Earth. But on the other hand, yeah, I do fly a lot. I'm sorry, this is all me. I apologize to everyone else. We all need to get this going down. I'm sure a big part of this is also that the UK is a big transatlantic hub. If you're flying between Europe and the US, or sometimes even the US, East Coast, and Asia, you're likely to take a stop in London. It's the biggest hub in Europe for that reason, and so maybe that's skewing the numbers, but still, it's a questionable thing. But what's not questionable here is the fact that the US has the most actually, wait, this is just international aviation, huh? This is not including the domestic market in both China and the US. That's probably why the UK is so high up on this. Like, try taking a domestic flight in the UK. I'll come back to that point later maybe, or maybe I won't. But yeah, if you look at the, for instance, the number of airports in the US, you'll find that it's not even like it's close. The US has 13,500 airports. Mexico in third has almost a tenth of that. Canada has, it's kind of crazy how fast you can move down this list. China has 500 airports, and the United States has 13,500 airports. I'm always shocked that the United Kingdom is at 16. I had to look through the list because I didn't fully believe it. Also, I'd have to question this website. It's just trying to tell you about airports, but they're like, hey, if you like airport information, you might want to read about coronavirus data. There was that weird phase in the internet where everyone's like, I just want to doom scroll coronavirus statistics. This isn't even a very good page. Although apparently cases are going up recently, huh? You wanna learn about Corona? Well, no, we're gonna learn about airlines, which is basically an unrelated subject for the most part. But as you can see, yeah, it is a massive country, not only for international kilometers, but for domestic kilometers, and also for the number of airports. If you want to get around the United States, the easiest and fastest and most effective way that people will do for long distances is taking public transport. And the reason that people won't include this in the public transport category, the reason it's not on this map or on these sorts of statistics, is because, first of all, public transport is for the public good. Intercity public transport is kind of questionably not. I mean, New York to LA is not really, this isn't a scrappy helping people get on the career ladder. That's something you do when you're doing, that's mostly for tourism or for doing a job that is very high-end and probably could do without subsidy, whereas getting around New York, getting from the poorest area of the city to the area where the jobs are, is good for people who have jobs, and it's good for people who would otherwise lead a life of regret. So that's the first reason it's not looked at. The second reason is environmentally, public transport is usually lower on per CO2 emissions per person or whatever, whereas, aviation, probably not so much. Although, if you actually look at the per person use, as long as it's a nicely densely cramped jet, then you actually probably are more efficient than all driving your own cars. But still, that's the second reason. And the third reason is because are planes even public transport? Toycat, you can't make a video about public transport and then make the whole thing about planes. I know you like planes, but they're not public transport. But they are. Why are they not public transport? The only difference is you have to buy a ticket in advance, and that's true for the train system in the UK too. So, planes are public transport. I'll die on this hill. But just in case you don't buy into that, I want to talk about something which is kind of related to... So, okay, America has the best public transport network, but it's the type that no one likes because it's intercity. When it comes to in-trackers, and ultimately, when we look at American public, person density, when we look at the density in America, you can see that, the reason that trains aren't such a big thing between those cities is good luck getting from here to over here with a train. Even the highest speed train that is currently imaginable is going to take you 10 hours to do the coast-to-coast journey. It's 5 hours in a plane. Even with 2 hours of faffing about in an airport and an hour of connection time on the other end, it's still going to be faster than the train, and probably a lot faster than the train because we're not going to be building any hyperloops across the country anytime too soon. Train infrastructure means you need to have train tracks going directly between each of the points, whereas when your population is so spread out, as the US kind of is, just being able to have the end infrastructure, it's like building just the train station, not having to build the tracks. And indeed, the tracks are the sky. It's this universal resource. Actually, I kind of want to take a diversion on this video. The reason that planes are so successful is the same reason that boats are more successful. Even now, boats are a more successful transport mechanism than trains are, because trains require infrastructure, even though it's super efficient infrastructure, and indeed, boats are more effective than lorries are for the same reason. Trucks. You're using this free resource the planet just has, and you know what the planet just has? We just happen to have air. And, honestly, so when it comes to transport, we kind of have this attitude of let's try and make it nice and easy for people to make journeys. And although that doesn't work so well in the United States, apparently, the idea is just try to make people make journeys, and this can be by any form of transport, including by car. But the problem with making cars more common, because, I am someone who really believes in the economic benefits of giving people access to transport, but the argument against it is, well, the government invests millions in expanding highways to alleviate congestion. Drivers are drawn to the new open road, even adding new trips where they previously would have avoided them. Ooh, where is this going? Well, development follows and it prompts more longer car trips, but now we're right back where we started, but with millions in the hole. And this is actually not an argument against road travel. This is an argument against expanding cities, because all of these people who live here in this new development right here now can go to and from the city, can do things, presumably pay some form of city tax, you would hope. There are new journeys being done, more economic developments being spurred, new people are living more prosperous lives. But the argument that this is trying to say is that you can expand roads endlessly, but more people and more business, there's going to be more uses for those roads until they eventually fill up, whereas something that is immune from that is, of course, good old trusty public transport. But I think that's actually not true. I mean, here's the issue, right? If you look at public transport use per person, was going down, like we mentioned. It's we got multiple graphs to prove that for whatever reason, that's what people are doing. But it's not like the amount we're plowing in. It's not like we're making services worse, etc. If you look at the CTA, which was on that first map, again, the public transport use in Chicago is about 10% lower over the last 10 years. Than it was before. But if you look at their budgets, it goes up every single year. So in 2020, the budget was 1.57 billion. In 2022, the budget is 1.75 billion. They just, the digits, it seems. And, you know, that is above inflation. Maybe not above inflation after this year, but, you know, it's been making above inflation gains, but yet fewer people are choosing to use it. This is because people don't just say, is there a bus? I must get on the bus. I have a job to get to. You know, like, that's not how cars work either. Like, oh, I have this car, I'd better start making journeys in it. Don't you hear they widened the highway? Highway has been widened, honey. We're going to the store on the other side of town. And she's like, no, I really don't want to. And it's like, didn't you hear the highway was widened? It's like, that's not, you know, induced demand is used way too often on the internet to just say that all development in cars is bad. But instead it's like, well, how about instead of that, you try and make a world where more of those people, especially people who otherwise would not or cannot be driving cars, have access to better forms of systems. And that's why investing in public transport is important. But people try to act like, oh yeah, there is no place for the private vehicle. I think the problem you're always going to arrive at with this argument is that actually, right now, everything improves as the general standard. This is hard to believe when you look at your life in like 3 to 4 year periods, and it doesn't seem like the world improves much. In fact, given the information we're all consuming, it looks like things are getting worse all the time. But, you know, like everything is generally improving. The price of airline tickets goes down, everyone's favorite public transportation. The price of, you know, the fuel efficiency is always going up. If you look at the United States right here, you can see that even they, with their literal zero regard for how many miles per gallon they get, you can see that they've gone from 11 to 9 miles per gallon as an average fuel consumption. Is this miles per gallon? I'm not sure what this is. Liters of gasoline equivalent per 100 kilometers. They've got, yeah, so they've gone up in fuel efficiency by 20% or something. Liters per 100 kilometers is an interesting measurement. It's probably a better one than miles per gallon. In terms of whatever, you know, long story short is these things are going up all the time, and the reason I bring this up is because the reason that I think this actually happens, again, so people talk about induced demand and they say, yes, you widen the road and then magically people flock to fill it. What's actually happening is there are a limited number of, you know, like transport ways to get somewhere, right? That, like, you know, there's like almost like a trade-off everywhere. And when you widen the highway, you're saying, here is this free way to get places. We're going to spend collectively hundreds of millions widening this highway. As you can see, it's 3 lanes here when it used to be 1 lane here. And apparently a single farm on a country estate. You know, what is this meant to be? But there's just a single farm before, now there's a whole, instead of a farm, there's a whole bunch of people. But like when they widen the highway, they're effectively saying, here is this free resource we're all spending money on, therefore you're all spending money on. Whereas you can do you know, what you should ideally be doing is balancing that spending that you're putting on new roads with the spending that you put on, you know, permanent adoption of promotional price reductions. And are they doing any cool, okay, yeah, the Blue Line forest branch track and power improvements, you know, making your public transport actually good, actually better is ideally the goal here. People spend far too long focusing on just, we need to make, you know, like public transport the better option by making driving worse. But it's like, actually, wait. You just need to make both better at the same time. The reason the US, I would say, fails and falls into this category right here is, first of all, down to that population density thing. Like, can you really put public transport in most of this country? I mean, statistically, no. But even when you just talk about the urban areas, which is where 80% of the people live, you still have to think about, okay, everyone has these big, ridiculously expensive cars. Can you actually tempt people out of them? Probably not by just saying, oh, we've got 25% reduction in fares this time. It's about making the service actually good. It's about making... I just found a USB cable in my pocket right now. I thought it was like a gummy worm, but it's a USB cable. And you know what? Do you want to see my USB-C to USB-C cable? This is a show and tell video now. If you wonder what I was fiddling with this whole video, I was like, it's so, like, it's one of these stretchy types. Anyway, long story short here. Um, you know, this is the high quality content you come for on the second channel. Am I talking about public transport, or am I talking about what's in my pocket today? But no, there's this really interesting problem that actually has to be solved, and the interesting problem that has to be solved is how exactly do you tempt people out of these and get people onto these? I want to see a picture of a train somewhere. Maybe this. You know, let's go find a train on the map. And the answer is you make this better. You don't try and make this worse, because lots of people, you know, already bought these. They're trying to get places. You don't want to, like, ruin people's lives just to further your objectives. That's something I find a certain element of every internet forum that talks about political decisions is like, why don't we just ruin people's lives that have different decisions to us? But, you know, we don't have to ruin people's lives, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. But what we could do is we could say, how about things are just a little bit better. You know, there are better. The metro service is faster than the equivalent drive. And rather than saying, well, we can make all metro and bus services faster than the equivalent drives by making the drives terrible, it's like, how about instead we focus on, you know, because, okay, here's an interesting fact, right? So, I spoke about Intercity Rail a little bit in there. By the way, also, I love this map of US population by state, because if you actually measure linearly, it's like, yeah, basically no one lives in most of the states. Like, there's a deep red state here, which is funny because opposite of the other time you usually see red and blue on a map. There's a kind of red state here. Then there's like 3 purple states of... is Illinois purple? Yeah, purple, I guess. Illinois is purple. New York's kind of purple. Florida's purple. Then there's some very slightly dark blue states. And the rest is somewhere so close to 0 million on the 0 to 10 million scale that it basically shows as the same color. I mean, you can just about spot the difference between Wyoming, Montana, and Utah, for example, or Nevada and Colorado. But like, still, this is, in my opinion, a really good way to show the population by state and really drive home this point that this red area right here contains an insane number of people. Same with, I guess, this red area and this red area and all of these red areas. But what I also think is important to mention, because again, we're talking about public transport, we're talking about the United States in particular, because, you know, the internet loves to talk about the US a little bit, and apparently I'm joining in on that. And so yeah, I wanted to talk about the UK train network, because people might say like, man, we should have a high-speed rail network to connect this. But if you look at the UK high-speed rail network, I'm sorry, this is Wikipedia's map. What is the contrast you put on this bad scheme with Wikipedia? I'm sorry, but if you look at this a little bit closer, you can see that the only high-speed connection the UK actually has, because yellow is higher speed as far as I know, and then grey is like high-ish speed. I think it's called like high and higher speed. There's weird categories, but the highest speed UK network is like from London to up to Edinburgh, Glasgow, down to Bristol, you know, it connects the major economic centres by high-ish speed rail, and you'll notice that, like, it doesn't go anywhere further north than Edinburgh or Glasgow. There's not the population density to support it. It doesn't go any further southwest than Bristol, not the population density to support it. And so I think when people talk about intercity US rail, you need to be realistic about that. You need to say, yeah, we connect the west up. I would say this corridor right here, add you know, Las Vegas onto there if you really want to. Maybe take a real stretch and go up to Salt Lake or to Colorado, or both. But then there's this, you know, like, there's this issue of like, would you really want to connect all of these states? Would you really need to do anything besides expand out from Chicago, expand out from New York, expand out from the big cities to places around them? I think probably not. I think, given I actually have taken the 20-hour train journey from Chicago, this red blodge, to New York, this red blodge. The 2-hour plane is better in every way. I think it's actually a video on this channel, right? The 2-hour plane is better in every way. If you want to watch that video, it's in one of the saddest times. If you want a bit of sadness in your day, but you also want to see some travel vlogging, that's the video for you, let me tell you. I think my camera is giving me some weird warnings right now. I'm going to see if this was a good video. I hope you enjoyed it. My grand point is that public transport use is down in the US, and therefore, as a result, private car use is up. And that is bad on a lot of different objective goals, you could say. You know, if your goal is about that carbon usage per person, and your goal is about the type of person who cannot drive a car, you know, young people, old people, you know, like all the different categories in between, people who live in dense housing where you cannot physically park a car outside of it. Yeah, there are lots of downsides that do come from this, but you know what doesn't come from this? I don't know, the end of this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. I have Again, I've been using a camera here, and I know you're concerned. You're thinking, Toy Cat, did you buy a brand new camera for this channel? You said the quality would suck. Don't worry, this is just it's a relatively expensive camera that I have had laying around for a while. I was gonna try and hook it up, and it's really hard, okay? But my monitor is now wide enough that I can balance my camera on top of it. And so, hello. Hope you're liking it. Hope the green screen works. I imagine it. I guess there's probably gonna be a little cut where my microphone is up there. Is my microphone working? Is this video working? Let's find out. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you in... No, I don't hope you enjoyed this, actually. I hope that you do with this video, whatever it is that you do with videos. You know, procrastinate the end of your day. Use it to argue that, like, well, I'm basically learning, and like, no. You're watching low-quality videos on the internet because it helps you to feel like you're connected to a guy on the other side of the planet to you. And that's a problem, because the way you should actually connect people on the other side of the planet is with everyone's favorite form of public transportation. That's right, it's international aviation. Man, the UK really is quite green on this. This is fascinating. International aviation is here allocated to the country of depart. Yeah, you can't even really argue that's connecting passengers then, can you? That's fascinating. I mean, I guess we're an island. We can argue that, like, well, how are we gonna get places otherwise? If you're German, you just drive over to Poland. I mean, yeah, with or without your military backing. But if you're from the UK, what are you gonna do? You're gonna drive to the train to France? Have you seen how? Okay, you know what? This is a point. I didn't know till recently. I was looking into, like, oh, just for fun, like driving in France be fun, because I want to drive a wrong side car. Anyway, and like, have you seen how expensive it is to drive, to actually get in the tunnel? You don't want to do it. What you want to do instead is you want to fly to where you go. And then just get a car there or something. Pro tip: don't drive from the UK to France. Pro tip: don't go to France. Actually, this video was not brought to you by the French Tourism Board. And yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next one. Oh, this was brought to you by Patreon. Give me money so I can not make improvements to this channel in the slightest, and not give you any benefits besides cozy feelings that you got to talk to Toy Cat in this. I guess the real benefit is you get to watch me eat kebab with your money. That's a Patreon video right now. But yeah, thank you for watching. Second channel, don't care. Bye.